Professor Rad here, and today I want to talk a little bit about operations and the experience of doing math for mathematicians. There are a couple of different types of mathematicians, like different reasons people might want to study math. So I'm going to speak from my personal experience. So I'm what's called like a pure mathematician. So that means I like math purely because I like math. So that's why I study math. So applied mathematicians, I know that's weird, right? But applied mathematicians like math because of its applications and its usefulness to the world. Whereas I like math because it's kind of like a puzzle. And even though it's hard and frustrating, like definitely hard and frustrating for sure, for me, there comes this sort of satisfaction from cracking through that puzzle and finding the weak spots in the wall and breaking through and seeing the light. So one of the things to me that's both fun, but can also be frustrating with math is the playing around nature of math. So to help explain, think about a game that you played when you were a kid, or even think about video games that you play now. So when you're playing like a video game, it's very rare, unless you're like, I don't know, super mega expert, but it's very rare that you will defeat every single level of a game on the first go, right? That's why you often have multiple lives in a video game. So, you try something and then at some point it doesn't work and you die, or, something happens. And so you try it again and you try it again. And sometimes in the trying again, you're building up the skills that you need to be successful at the level. And other times in the trying again, you're trying out new things that you hadn't tried before because what you tried before didn't work. And sometimes it's a combination of those things, right? Or if you think about like when you were real little and playing with like blocks, or if you have kids and they play with blocks, right? There's no like limit to how you can combine, like there are certain rules with blocks, right? Like you can't, I don't know, glue two blocks together unless you're playing with glue. But if you're just sort of stacking blocks, right, you can stack them, you can create different structures, and sometimes you create something you like, and sometimes you're like, nah, I'm just going to demolish this. And sometimes the fun is in the building, and sometimes the fun is in the demolishing, right? So there's sort of a playfulness to these experiences because you're playing, of creating and learning and trying stuff out and not being afraid to try something out and say, oh yeah, that's really cool. Or try something out and you're like, I worked really hard on this, but I hate how it came out, or I'm trying really hard at this level and I'm trying this one technique and it's just not working, right? So when you play, to me, that's the experience of math, is I'm going to play around with some stuff. I'm going to try to combine numbers in new and interesting ways and see what I get. And sometimes those combinations create really great situations. And sometimes those combinations are frustrating. They're difficult to do. It's like a difficult level in a game. They're difficult sort of operations or things to do to numbers. And sometimes I end up creating fantastically new objects that I wouldn't have created otherwise. So all of this to say is we are about to embark on the playfulness of using our objects. So far in chapter 1, we've been studying our objects. We've been learning the mechanics of a video game. We've been learning what kind of blocks we have in our box of blocks. And now we get to play them. So, okay, now that I know how to jump and how to kick and fight in a video game, let's go play a level. Or now that I know that I have some square blocks and round blocks and triangle blocks, let's go build something with them, right? So that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be playing with whole numbers and decimals and trying to combine them to create new things. When you engage in this process, the one thing I'm going to ask you is to please remain open-minded about it. We're going to explore several different techniques for combining objects. So first, we're going to start out with addition. And if you are comfortable adding whole numbers and decimals, then you're probably going to be comfortable with the algorithm that you learned. So an algorithm is a process, it's like a series of steps that you use. So for example, maybe you learned how to add by lining things up and then carrying digits over, and that has always worked for you. And if that's the case, that's awesome, fantastic, continue to use it. try out these other techniques just to see connections between that technique, or maybe you're like, oh, actually, even though that's always worked for me, I kind of like this one too. This fits my brain more. And more importantly, if that carrying thing never worked for you, if you were like, I never lined things up right, I always made mistakes on those, my calculator always gives me a different answer when I go to add, I don't understand this carrying stuff, then we're going to explore lots of different techniques to see what works better for you. So maybe there's another technique that you've never tried before that just clicks. It makes more sense with your brain. Now, I'm encouraging you to remain open-minded because there is a certain level of comfort in familiarity and a certain level of discomfort in new things. So even though the carrying stuff never worked for you, it feels a little bit more comfortable because you've at least seen it in the past. So I would encourage you, just because something is comfortable doesn't mean that it's going to be easier for you, or doesn't mean that it works in the same way that your brain works. It might be different. So give yourself a moment, allow yourself to be uncomfortable so that you can learn and practice these new techniques. And then once you've got comfortable a little bit with all of them, then you can see, okay, I kind of get what this one's doing, but it doesn't make sense to my brain. This one I get a little bit better. It makes more sense with the way that my brain works. So I'm going to invest in learning this technique. So that's what I'm going to encourage you to do. So please, again, just remain open-minded, try them out. In the long scheme of things in my classes, if I ask you to add two numbers, you can use whatever technique is going to work best for you. Okay? As we work through practicing these techniques, I'm going to ask you to do some problems using this technique just to encourage you to practice it and get a little bit more comfortable with it. But after we've learned them all, you can use whichever one's going to work best for you. So yeah, I think that's that's where I'm going to end this one, this introduction to our chapter 2. Yeah, so you have a fantastic day, and in our next video, we'll start adding. Bye for now, everybody.